You better watch out. You better not cry. You better not pout. I'm telling you why. Santa Claus is coming to town. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. He knows if you've been bad or good, so be good for goodness sakes. He's making a list, checking it twice, gonna find out who's naughty or nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. I just love what you people write about me. Listen to this. Down the chimney St. Nicholas came with a bound. He was dressed all in fur from his head to his foot, and his clothes were all tarnished with ashes and soot. A bundle of toys he had flung on his back, and he looked like a peddler just opening his sack. His eyes, how they twinkled, his dimples, how merry. His cheeks were like roses, his nose like a cherry. His droll little mouth was drawn up in a bow, and the beard on his chin was white as the snow. The stump of his pipe he held tight in his teeth, and the smoke had encircled his head like a wreath. He had a broad face and a round little belly that shook when he laughed like a bowl full of jelly. Isn't that a hoot? Actually, my nickname was Skinny because I was tall and lanky, and I often fasted in order to better serve others and to serve the Lord. Of course, it looks like I've gained a few pounds since then. And I really love that song, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa Claus. All this is wonderful, and I'm flattered. But it really doesn't tell you who I am. So who am I? Well, in one of your newspapers, I saw a cartoon of a man sitting in a chair reading the newspaper. And he said, "Honey, it says here that scientists finally have discovered the true meaning of Christmas." I guess you could say I did that 1,700 years ago. My name is Nicholas. I was born in 250 A.D. in the coastal town of Patara in the country you call today Turkey. My parents were wealthy, and I was raised in a Christian home. But sadly, my parents died when I was a boy from the plague. As I grew older, I loved to visit other places, loved traveling, loved using my money to help others. And then, when I turned 50, I took a trip to the Holy Land. I wanted to see Jerusalem, Galilee, Bethlehem, all the places where Jesus walked. And while there, the Lord touched my heart, and I decided to return home and become a pastor. So I returned to my village of Myra, near my birthplace. The year was 320 A.D. And I became pastor or bishop for the people in that area. And in my day, this is how we dressed. Your nurses and your doctors often wear green or white uniforms. Your police officers often wear blue. And your football players, what such odd attire. I mean, jerseys padded with numbers on them, and knickers, and such funny-looking hats. Well, in my day, this is how we dressed. This is how ministers dressed. And it was meant to tell other people about Jesus. My red bishop's coat was meant to remind people that Jesus' blood saved us from our sins. The Lord be praised. And my hat, called a mitre, is meant to remind people that Jesus is the helmet of salvation. And my stole is meant to be a yoke to remind others that we are to be servants and to care for others. And my staff is meant to remind us of Jesus, the Good Shepherd, and how I am to be a shepherd for his flock. And my shoes, well, they're meant to keep my feet warm. In my day, it was dangerous being a Christian. Rome ruled the world. And the emperor was a man named Diocletian. He was such a pagan. He declared himself to be a god, and he insisted that people burn incense to him and bow down and say, "Diocletian is Lord." Well, I refused, and the emperor rough-handled me. He persecuted my people, and he sent me into exile to live away from them. But then mean old Diocletian died. The Lord be praised. And a new emperor came. His name was Constantine, and he was a Christian, and he allowed me to return back to my people. Oh, what a joy it was that day. What a feast. What a worship we had. I was able to spend the rest of my days with my congregation. For 22 years, I cared for my parish. But my greatest joy always were the children. You see, I was single. My parents were gone. I had no family. The church became my family, and other people's children became my children in the faith. How I loved to sit children on my lap and tell them stories about Jesus. The other great joy I had was giving gifts. The Lord said it's better to give than to receive. The Lord be praised. Why, once there was a man in my parish who went bankrupt. And in order to pay his debts, he was going to have to sell his 3 daughters into slavery. Sadly, a practice that was common in my day. Well, when I heard about it, I prayed, I gathered an offering, and during the darkness of night, I walked by his house. A window was open, and I threw the bag of gold through the window. Well, what I didn't know was that the 3 daughters had hung their stockings by the chimney to dry. And wouldn't you know it, that bag of gold fell into one of the stockings. Can you imagine the joy the next morning when the children, the girls opened up, put on their stockings, and what they found was the gold. It not only paid off all their debts, but allowed the family to stay together. Another time, there was a young woman in my congregation who wanted to get married, but she had no dowry. So I prayed, I gathered some money, and at night I climbed up onto a roof, and I dropped the bag of money down the chimney. And wouldn't you know it, she too had stuck her stockings by the chimney with care to dry. And the money fell into that stocking. And the next morning, she put on her stocking, she found the money, and a wedding was hastily called. And the best part about it all was that because it was given in secret, there was no one to thank but God. I hear tell that on Christmas Eve, people still like to put stockings by the fireplace in hopes that something good will still fall into their stocking by morning. But I don't want you to think that I was just a local pastor who loved children and who went about giving gifts. No, I was a scholar. In my day, the church was having trouble trying to decide what to believe about Jesus and the Holy Trinity and the Bible. So Constantine, the emperor, gathered all of us together at a council in Nicaea. And I was one of the leaders there. And while we were there, we canonized the Bible. We decided what books to put in and what books to leave out. It was 325 AD. And at the same time, we also put together our beliefs in what you call today the Nicene Creed. But I don't want you to think I was perfect. I'm a sinner just like everyone else. While once at the Council of Nicaea, I got into such a violent argument with another pastor over a point of theology that I hit him in the jaw. I'm ashamed. That was wrong, and I ended up spending the night in jail. I'm sorry that happened because the Lord said that we should go the extra mile, turn the other cheek. The Lord be praised. For 22 years, I was an elder for my people. I preached, I taught, I baptized, I offered communion. I buried the dead. I married folks, but all the time my 2 great joys were always the children and giving gifts in secret. The Lord called me away on December 6th, 342 AD. But by then, I had become well known in the area. On December 6th, it became popular to have a feast and a worship service in my honor. Even people would dress up like me and sit children on their laps and give them gifts. But then they started calling me a saint, and things got out of hand. The countries of Russia, Greece, and Sicily made me their patron saint. Merchants, bankers, sailors, children, and women wishing to get married all made me their patron saint. So what's a patron saint? Well, some of you young people collect baseball cards or Yu-Gi cards. A saint is a Christian hero whose example can be followed. But then things got out of hand. Before you know it, they started naming churches after me, and people started wearing little images of me around their necks. Some even started to pray to me as if I was God. But it was never meant to be that way for me to overshadow Jesus. And then things went the opposite way. The Puritans made it illegal to mention my name. In the 1600s in England, it was illegal to light a candle, sing a Christmas carol, give a gift, or even make a mincemeat pie. Christmas, it was determined, was to be celebrated somberly, alone, home, quietly. But people will celebrate, and unless we teach them how to eat and drink and dance and make merry, the world will. We don't need either one of these extremes. Both are too much. Today there are people who believe in Santa and forget about Jesus. And there are others like the Puritans of old who despise my name. One church even burned me in effigy. This is all too much, these extremes. I want to be remembered as someone who loved God, cared for children, and gave gifts to others. A man said to me the other day, "Look what has come to the world." And I said, "No, look who has come into the world." He said, "Look what the world has done to Jesus' birthday." I said, "No, look what Jesus has done to the world." I once asked a little girl, I said, "What is a saint?" And thinking about the stained glass windows with Christian heroes on them, she said, "A saint is someone who lets the light in." That's what I, Nicholas, want to be for you. Someone who lets the light in. One of those great cloud of witnesses who encourages you on your own great race of faith. I want to point you to the one who saved me, who gave me children to love, a generous heart, and a place to serve. I want to point you to the one who became one of us, that we might become one of his. The Lord be praised. And oh, Merry Christmas!